Hello and welcome to Cognitions, Speaking the Unspeakable with JP
and Stacy D.
I am JP Craddock, and that is the one and only Stacy D Love. We are broadcasting remotely from KUAW Radio. Coming up on the show today, we have our question of the day, which is male victims of domestic violence. What does it look like and how does it happen? If you all ever have questions that you want us to address or respond to or answer on the show, by all means, you can inbox those to us on our Facebook page or email them to us at speakingtheunspeakable0608@gmail.com. All right, Stacy D, what's going on?
And also, please like us on Facebook and YouTube and subscribe.
Please. Stacy D, what's going on in your world?
Check in. Okay, so we are in the 50 club. So we have a lot of 50 birthday parties coming up, and one of my most dearest and loving little big sister is what I called her. She had her big 50th birthday party.
Hold on just a second. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's not airing at all. I just got a message that the show is not airing. And
it's on my Facebook page. I see it.
Okay.
But I'm on the KUAW website, though.
It might be a Facebook or YouTube problem. Okay. I'm sorry, but go ahead, Stacy D. I'm sure that, Mr.
Walker.
I was
rudely interrupted.
Mr. Walker will take care of it later.
Okay. Cool beans. Okay, so my big little sister had her 50th birthday party. It was a bling. It was fun. She had it at Club 42. He's going to be one of our guests coming on. Everyone's scared because his face. When we said radio, they was fine to get their voices, but when they time to get their faces, act like they're scared to come in. So anyway, we were at the club enjoying ourselves, which she should have had it at East Sports Bar KC, because I really did like that young man, Brandon. Didn't you enjoy him?
Yes.
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 Anyway, so
Brandon was wonderful.
It was wonderful. So Lounge 42 have a stage, and we have to get up on the stage, and that's where they take all the pictures at, right? So we were taking a great big old family picture, and your girl was looking bad. I had my little split down the middle shirt that went all the way to my belly buttons, looking just flawless like always. Thank you, Jesus.
All your cleavage was out.
No, but the way it's made, it wasn't any cleavage. It was like covering up, If
it goes to the navel, that's cleavage. That's your whole upper torso out. Go ahead.
Very tasteful. It was very tasteful.
I'm sure it was. Oh, of course, Stacy D. Yes.
Yes, most definitely.
I'm just messing with you. Now go on, tell us about the cleavage.
Exactly. Nothing about the cleavage. But doggone camera wants to act up all the time. Anyway, so we're at the club and take our pictures and things. Oh my goodness, I'm having the hardest time here with my camera. I apologize to everyone. And we were taking our pictures and the whole family was up there. And then one of my nieces was like, "Auntie," I said, "What?" She was like, "One of your breast pads fell out," because you have to do the little sticky things to make it look right when you had a shirt on. Even though, I'm 52 and riding tight.
Riding tight? You had about this. This is a wardrobe malfunction.
It was a wardrobe malfunction. It fell on the floor.
Okay, what exactly failed though, Stacy? What exactly failed?
The whole little cup thing that I was holding up the sisters.
Okay, hold on, because
you got two cups, so one over here and one over here. So just one fell because they just stick on. They just stick so they can just hold everything.
So when women, because we don't understand how women keep it together on the red carpet when J-Lo be having everything out, but nothing comes out. You're saying it's because you got some sticky cups on.
Sticky cups, right.
And the sticky cups keep everything where it's supposed to be.
Where it's supposed to be.
and one of your cups fell out onto the floor, which means one of the twins, didn't one of the twins come with it?
Twin didn't come out. You stay right.
How'd you keep the twin in? If the cup...
Oh, no. Wait. As far as I know, she might have did come out. I don't know.
Oh.
But I was like, oops. So, Stacy D being who she is, I had to let everybody in the front line, because I was in the front taking the picture too, okay? Because I'm one of the shortest one, even with my 6 inches on. I'm still shorter than everybody. So I'm like, oh, y'all, hold on. I need your help. So I had to pick it up, turn around, flip it back on, get it together, turn back around. And
okay, so the life lesson in this, because when we do these check-ins present some life lesson, no matter how hilarious it might be or how serious it might be. The life lesson is for you ladies out there, when you got the twins and sticky cups on them because your cleavage goes to your navel, be sure those cups are sticky enough. Is that?
Yeah. See, that was for me two-stepping too much and sweating. And I think that's what it was. It had gotten a little sweaty, moisture on it. So you got to stay cute. Just walk around cute when you got the sticky cups on, because they don't like the. I don't think mine could.
Listen, this is what I need you to do, Stacy D. I need you to get a hold of J-Lo, Beyonce, Janet Jackson.
I can't afford their sticky cups, okay?
You need better sticky cups.
They might not even have sticky cups. They probably have plastic surgery cups, okay? I don't want that ticket item. I just keep with the sticky cups. It might be time for me to get some more sticky cups, okay? But I want to thank all my family for holding me down in the picture. It was like, okay, they're like, it's right, Auntie. It's right, Sissy. And I turned around and got my pose.
There you go. Okay. That is funny. Okay. Yeah. Ladies out there listening, please get your stickies right. Okay. Get your stickies right. But if you have a wardrobe malfunction, you do like Stacy D did. Spin around, slap your cup back on, and keep taking pictures. There you go. Okay. Lord mercy. Okay. Here's my little check-in for today. I have multiple times, but once again, I have had to redefine my homeless contributions policy. Every person who lives in the city has a homeless person contribution policy, okay? Which is, do you give them money? Do you not give them money? What you gonna do? Because and for those listeners who are not, we are in Kansas City. And in Kansas City, on any given day, if I was not at home, you see we have technical difficulties trying to do this radio show from home. When we're not in a pandemic, if in a given day, I will be, I'll get at least 5 to 8 requests for money per day.
On the street?
The homeless. Yes.
So are they like texting?
I almost started a full fund to keep up with the homeless.
Oh, so are they texting you?
No, everywhere you go, you haven't noticed that? If you go to the gas station, they are posted up outside the gas station. They're posted up outside the grocery store. They're posted up outside my office. Like anywhere you go in the city, even at major not even major intersections. At intersections, when you get at a stoplight, there will be 2 or 3. You got one coming on your driver's side and one coming on your passenger side, and they both need money. Okay. And so over the years, you don't have this problem. You have not seen the homeless in Kansas City, Stacy D?
I have like tunnel vision, and I just, I had 3 kids before, and there wasn't nobody even 2 years old. So I just block things out.
I don't know how you're doing it. I mean, we don't have the amount of homeless like in LA and places city. Where they have
Dallas. Yeah. New York is terrible.
We have a huge homeless population here. I'm shocked that you do not have this problem. Anyway, so my point is, over the years, I have had to change my policy. My initial policy was, you see the homeless, give them some money, okay? Because I'm always worried that Jesus might disguise himself as a homeless person and I not give Jesus no money and end up in hell. So I don't want to go to hell, okay? So I'm like, let me give all the homeless people money because one of them might be the Lord. And I'm not trying to have them kind of problems. I don't want hell problems, okay?
Okay, well, FYI, homeless people, Gerald is going to give you some money. Not a sandwich, some money.
I've changed my policy.
What's the policy now, JP?
That was my initial policy. And then in my early 20s, I had went to Chicago with a friend of mine and the homeless came up and I was giving him money and she got mad at me and said, what you doing? He homeless, I'm giving him money. Don't be giving our homeless people money because, you know, in every city, people claim they homeless people. And I was in her city. Don't give our homeless people money. You supporting addiction to drugs and alcohol and you handicapping them, you exacerbating problems that they already have. Okay. And I thought about it. And so I said, I do need to change my policy because I don't want to support drug addiction and alcoholism. Okay. I was in my early 20s. So I stopped giving the homeless people money. Well, then after I thought about it some more, because it kept creeping up in the back of my mind, like, okay, Jesus is going to ask you for some money. You're not going to give it. You're going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell and you'll give these people some money. You don't know who they are. And so I decided, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them food. If they are posted up outside of a fast food restaurant or something, I'm going to give them food. Well, I encountered some problems because back when there was a fast food restaurant on the plaza, you know, there's no fast food restaurants on the plaza now, but there used to be. I'm not going to say the name of it because one, they ain't paying us to mention their name. And two, I hate their food. Okay, so I'm not endorsing them. But there was a homeless gentleman posted up outside of the fast food restaurant and he asked for money. And so I said no. I went in, I bought him a meal. I came out with the meal. Out. He wanted to go. Let me tell you, he was so livid that I brought out food. And his perspective was, I didn't ask you for no food. I asked you for some money. You know I need the money. You told me you needed the money for food. I wanted to smash this food in his face, but at the time I was already a therapist. And that's the problem. You become a therapist in your early 20s. It forces you to evolve prematurely when you really should still be able to act the fool, but you can't. And so I just was like, fine, you take the food or don't take the food. I don't know what to tell you. I don't eat this food. So eat it, throw it, do what you're going to do. But that was my policy. Well, last week I was at the pharmacy and a woman outside the pharmacy came up to me and said, please, she had tears and everything. Okay, this was not just me being like gullible. Tears and everything. I just got my daughter. We just left. I got her out of the hospital. She has diabetes. I need her diabetes medication. It costs $30. Please, can you help me? Please, can you help me? And so I only had a $20 and a couple of ones, okay? Because I'm living on by debit card. And so I gave her the 20. I get around to the pharmacy window to pick up my own meds. And I said, no, listen, the lady that came in who needs money for her daughter's diabetes medications, put those meds on my card, please, so that she can have her meds. They looked at me. Who you talking about? The lady with the baby that just got out the hospital, they need their diabetic medications. I'm trying to pay for these meds. Just put it on my card. We don't know who you talking about. They asking the other associates, did anybody come in here? Y'all know what he talking about? No, we don't know what he talking about. We don't know what you talking about. A woman didn't come in here. So I leave, drive back around the store. She's still standing there collecting $30 from everybody who comes out because everybody's like, oh, Lord, a kid, the baby got diabetes.
A baby, yes.
Give us some money. The baby got diabetes. I said, ma'am, using that word loosely because she took me for $20. They said that. What?
And some change.
I said, the pharmacy does not know who you are. They said that you never came in there to get medication for your baby. She gets an attitude. Well, I didn't tell you my daughter's name, so how you know who it was? They don't know who it was. Ma'am.
Now you on HIPAA problems.
Right. I said,
HIPAA problems with the
nobody. I told her, she don't know nothing about HIPAA. I said, they said no one has come to their window wanting meds for a child for diabetes medications. This is the 24-hour pharmacy, so it was late at night. Wasn't nobody coming in there but me and her. Me, because she never went. And so I said, I tell you what, because what they said, sir, if you want to help someone pay for their meds, come into the store with them to pay for their meds. That's what the pharmacy people told me, and I should have thought about doing that anyway. Mind you, I had my baby with me, though. Okay, I don't take my baby up in the pharmacy late at night, everybody breathing COVID. I'm not playing these games. But I didn't tell her that. So I said, ma'am, using that word loosely once again, I am willing to go in there with you to pay for these meds. Her response, no, that's all right. No, thank you. No, thank you. Ma'am, are you sure? Because your baby needs the meds. Y'all just left the hospital, diabetes medication. No, that's okay. That's okay. No. I'm fine. Sorry, I changed my policy.
Did you really never $20 back?
I should have made her give my $20 back. I didn't even make her give me my $20 back.
And it's against the law to be panhandling in the state of Kansas. It's against the law.
Oh, really?
Missouri does not have a statute like that yet.
Because I'm finna say, because at the gas station, it'd be the police be on one side and the homeless people on the other side. So
they just don't feel like arresting them, but it's against the law. If you call them, they're supposed to arrest them. They're supposed to.
Well, the life lesson in this is if they ask for food, give them the food. If they get mad, oh well. If they are at the pharmacy, do not give them money. Offer to go into the pharmacy. I never had this happen at the drugstore before. So it caught me off guard because I usually know how to handle this. Okay, out of my homeless people fund, my homeless fund account, But that's the life lesson. And apparently, Stacy D, I need to do whatever you're doing because you act like you ain't seen homeless people in this city.
No, I see them. I just don't pay them any attention.
Well, I need to pull it together. Okay, it's time for mental health and illness in the news. I got a bunch of stories, Stacy D, so you go first. You got any stories?
No, not really.
No?
No, not really. But I did want to touch back on there's something that's been in my soul brewing, and that's the whole Kirk Franklin
thing. I knew it. I knew you couldn't resist. I was sitting here thinking, oh, she ain't going to address Kirk Franklin. Go ahead.
Okay, first I want to go to the point I want to hit back about his son leaking their argument to social media. I really would, if that was one of my children. I'm not going to ask them to call in because I seen them yesterday. Seen them last week. Talking about, now we good, mama. But Kirk Franklin is the head of that household, and I'm pretty sure that he helps every household that he's over. And leaking that could have destroyed him. It could have destroyed him. And that child, I would treat him like a stranger on the streets, the homeless person. Because when you're out trying to destroy our household, and I'm going to say our household, because that's one of his children. So I know if he have any grandchildren, he's helping taking care of that. So that could have really impacted his income. It could have destroyed him.
So you cut him out the will.
Excuse me?
You cut him out the will.
Yeah, he'll be cut. Even before the will. As of that day, as that went up on the air, and we are for forgiveness. And when we talked about forgiveness, I would eventually forgive him, but he still wouldn't get any of my funds because you tried to deplete all of mine.
Exactly.
That was just so heartless.
Yes. You can't cut a hole in my pocket by leaking a video and then expect me to have money in my pocket for you. I absolutely agree. I'd cut him off.
Probably pays his rent. And the car he's driving in, he probably bought him that car.
Most likely.
The house he's living in, he probably bought him that house.
Cut the fool off. My problem with Kirk Franklin did an interview. Yes. One, I didn't like the stance that the interviewer took because I felt like she took a judgmental stance. And as far as Kirk Franklin is concerned, I kind of felt like he could have checked her a little bit better because I was waiting for him to say, one, this ain't nobody's business because my kid is 30-something years old. Two, no, I'm not reaching out to him. Look what happened the last time I had a conversation with him. When he pulls himself together, he can reach out to me. Like, but why is this everybody's? Why do I owe everybody an apology? I owe Jesus an apology.
Because he's I owe God an apology. And they look up to him as being a role model. And you know what? I believe I am my children's role model. No one else is.
Right.
There's
Pick your role models.
No basketball player, no preacher. I am my children's role model. So I don't look for no one else to be their role model. They can look at them and be like, oh, okay, I like to do some things that they're doing, but I'm my children's role model. The way I walk my life is how they supposed to look at it and roll through it.
Right.
But yeah, Kirk Franklin should have checked old girl, but he was probably like, he was on the little line, but he had so many people rallying for him. That should have gave him the power. That should have empowered him to be like, hey, don't worry, what you doing with your children?
Yeah, I felt like he subjected himself to her judgment and the judgment of society. And in that situation, yes, I mean, as you stated last week, he is an ordained minister, pastor, preacher, something. Okay, so yes, the cursing, especially GD, he did drop GD. I can, apologize maybe for saying GD.
GOT. He said GOT, not capital
right.
GOD.
Yeah, right. Here's the thing. That's simulated cursing. That's simulated using the Lord's name in vain. Okay, so I'm not necessarily buying that. But he owed an apology to the Lord for that.
But Gerald, I do have to agree with you. What you say. What you said, basically, that's between him and his God.
Yes. He let this woman kind of passively condemn him. I had a problem with that. I wanted him to check her. Okay. Here's my stories for mental health and illness in the news. I'm trying to roll through these stories because a lot of ridiculous things have happened.
How many stories do you have? One story per week. One story per week.
I'm getting too backed up on the stories. We got time for more than one. I'm gonna roll through them fast. Here's something interesting. Senator Warren had proposed a ultra-millionaire tax that would be 2% for those people who make $50 million to $1 billion. Okay, who have the assets of $50 million to $1 billion, and then 3% for billionaires. Even Republican voters who were polled were in agreement with this tax. Okay, this tax would raise $3 trillion in a decade and would only apply to America's richest 100,000 families. Guess what? It's not happening. You want to know why it's not happening? Because the Republicans in office voted against it. They voted against it despite the fact that the people who voted them in office, their constituents, were in agreement with it, which goes to show how self-serving and moralist the Republican Party can be. That even when their constituents want something, they are more loyal to corporate America and their, fellow millionaires and billionaires, that they voted against it. And that's unfortunate because That tax not going through means that we as taxpayers are going to have to pay that money. Okay. Next ridiculousness. The jurors have been selected for the George Floyd murder case. You
don't go there.
I got to, but real briefly, Officer Derek Chauvin. I'm not even about to say anything about the selection of the jurors. I mean, they select the jurors, whatever the case may be. What I want everybody to think about is the irony that a police officer who for a living has investigated homicides has pled not guilty to killing someone by cutting off their air supply for over 8 minutes. The irony of that. This fool, he investigates homicides, but somehow he doesn't know the definition of homicide. He doesn't know that if someone dies after you have your knee on their neck and they can't breathe, they're dead, but that's not homicide. He pleaded not guilty for that. That's the ridiculousness of it.
Okay, so it's a game to this, right? It's a game
really, to it. Help me.
It really truly is a game. And that's because I actually talked to one of my friends, and he's an FBI agent. And he said that he wants to get the love of the community back on his side. And the trial is not going to go all the way. This is what he thinks, because he's up in Minnesota, actually. He said that they are wanting the jury to get on his side, per se, and see him crying and see the sensitive part in him. And the trial is not going to go all the way. And he's going to take a lesser plea. They're going to open up doors for him to have a lesser plea. That's what he thinks, what his legal team is trying to get.
Well, I hope he's wrong, because this man needs to go to prison. Okay. And why do we have police officers who don't know the definition of murder?
He knows what the definition is.
Right, but he's not applying it to himself.
No.
Go figure. Imagine that. And which my check-in next week remind me to explain why I let an insurance company know, do not refer any more police officers to me who are required to see me for therapy for violence and police brutality. Like, I'm done with them. I'm going to explain why next week, because we don't have time right now. Okay, here's the next story that's interesting. The COVID relief package was passed and the checks are going out.
Oh, I'm mad about that. Why are we talking about this?
Well, here's the reason why. Okay, no Republicans voted for the relief package to go out for people to get checks. No Republicans voted for it. But when the checks go out to their Republican constituents, all of those fools are cashing their checks. So I'm trying to figure out how it is that a Republican can vote someone into office who's voting against them getting money, but then when your checks show up, you cashing your dang-gum check. They shouldn't get checks. Only Democrats should get checks. And why do Democrats have to beg and fight with Republicans to send them money to help them out? I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about welfare programs and all these other programs that Republicans also benefit from, but they're always voting fools into office who vote against these programs. It's annoying. It's annoying. And the irony of it, like, why are they cashing their checks, Stacy D? Because they put somebody in office who voted against it. Okay.
I'm not going to comment on that part. I'm just so upset about the whole stimulus thing. I didn't agree with a lot of it, so I'm not for it. Okay.
So you don't have anything on that. Okay, Here is the last one. There was another shooting in Colorado, this time at a grocery store. 10 people were killed. A 20-year-old employee. This is the interesting part. This is just one of the human interest aspects of it. A 20-year-old employee, Denny Stong, was his name, helped people to escape through a back door at the store before he himself was killed. And I just wanted to kind of talk about how a person who was in a position to save himself instead chose to help people escape in that, from that horrible, it was a massacre, like 10 people got killed, to the point of him losing his own life. And they say that there were other people who did, amazing and, selfless, heroic things. But I just wanted to kind of talk about that. The suspect, Ahmad Alisa, who is a 20-year-old, has been charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. Okay. Now, what his family is saying is that he has a history of being bullied in high school for being a Muslim. And they report that he also was suffering from feelings of paranoia. He's feeling like he's being followed, being chased. His phone is being tapped, being hacked into, computer being hacked into, people are watching him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What they're basically describing is delusions of paranoia. Okay. Now, which is psychosis. Okay. You have psychosis. Under psychosis, you have hallucinations, and then you have delusions. They're describing delusions of paranoia. Now, the diagnosis of delusions of paranoia can stand on its own, or it can be a symptom in one of the other psychotic disorders, being schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. So most likely what the defense is going to do is try to get him off on an insanity plea. What the prosecution needs to do, because I'm just looking at this clinically, what the prosecution needs to do is, one, it needs to be determined, well, was it schizophrenia? Was it schizoaffective? Because if it's schizoaffective, that psychosis is episodic. So the defense would then need to prove that he was experiencing a psychotic episode with delusions of paranoia at the time that he committed it. What really would be the safest route for the prosecution to take is to present a case where the defense has to draw a link between the psychosis, the delusions of paranoia, and going into a store and shooting up a bunch of people. Because if you're paranoid that people are watching you and following you,
why would you go into a place where a lot of people are?
Why are you shooting up these random people? So if they take that route and focus on that, that's just a way of saying, okay, you know what? He's delusional. Okay, he's psychotic. He's delusional. He's paranoid. But how can you show that that has something to do with him running in here and shooting up these people? That is what I am hoping, that they take that approach. Okay, any thoughts on that, Stacy D, before we get to the question of the day?
No thoughts about that, but what is our question of the day, JP?
Question of the day: male victims of domestic violence, what does it look like and how does it happen? First thing I want to do, I want to say what we are talking about is men who are in abusive relationships with women, okay? And these relationships are domestically violent. The first thing I want to do is I want to confront and challenge the stereotypes for what these men look like, because oftentimes in society, people think that these are, middle-aged, white males who are physically weak, that those are the only male victims of domestic violence. Basically, middle-aged white men who are physically weak. This is not true. And so what I have seen in my 22 years of therapy is that that is absolutely not the case. I have seen, all of my men that I see and have seen have been between the ages of 18 and 40, as young as 18 years old, in abusive relationships with women that are categorically domestic violence relationships. I have treated Black males for domestic violence victimization, white males, Hispanic males, and none of them really could be considered physically weak. Okay. And by that, physically, for example, I treated a 18-year-old who challenged all the stereotypes. I treated an 18-year-old who was, one, young, not middle age, 18, a Black male, not what one would consider physically weak. Okay, he had a history of violent crimes against men and other criminal acts as a part of him being, a gang member. But he was still in an abusive relationship with a young white female who was he was at the time like 20. I started seeing him at 18 when their relationship started. It went on for several years and was abusive. And he stayed in that relationship and was held hostage because he had children with her. And so something we're going to talk about
that is so reversed. Do you know how many women say that they stay in an abusive relationship because of children? And as we can see, it doesn't matter what the sex is, it is exactly the same things.
Yes, that is the common thread. That is the common thread in domestic violence that holds both men and women in these relationships is the children. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to challenge the stereotype and make it clear that I have treated everybody from construction workers to white collar professionals who are in abusive relationships and thus victims of domestic violence. Okay. Now, most of these men are experiencing the psychological and emotional abuse more so than the physical abuse, but nonetheless, they're in abusive relationships. So let's talk about the different types.
How do the psychological looks?
Well,
it looks the same way.
Let me start with the physical. Okay, the physical abuse. Yeah, the physical abuse, striking, kicking, slapping, punching, any of those things, those are acts of physical abuse that men experience at the hands of abusive women. And they don't fight back. Now, these men physically are stronger than their female partners. So physically, they could overpower them, but they cannot fathom hitting a woman. And these women know that. That is why they are able to get away with physically abusing these men. Okay. And the men who are especially vulnerable to physical abuse victimization are men who grew up in domestically violent households and they saw their mother being physically abused and they cannot fathom hitting a woman. People think that kids who grow up in DV households. I'm sorry, Stacy D.
A generational curse.
Yes, well, and a lot of times people think that kids who grow up in domestically violent households grow up and become abusers. That is not true. Many of them run in the opposite direction, determined that they will never put their hand on a woman, and they end up in abusive relationships because that is the world they grew up in. And once their women are physically abusive to them, they do not react. They do not respond in a manner that would be considered self-defense. And so that's how the physical abuse ends up taking place. Other men don't fight back because of the fear that if she calls the police, they're the ones that's going to get arrested and charged with domestic violence, which then can be used against them to prevent them from having custody of the children or even visitation with the children. On our Facebook page, I uploaded a couple of videos on male victims of domestic violence. And in one of those videos, one of the men was literally stabbed by his wife. When the police showed up, they arrested him. And that is the reason why so many of these men, they are like, no, I don't want the police involved. No one is going to believe me. And the truth of the matter is our courts have not exhibited equality in deciding child custody cases. So many of these men, they don't want to even take a chance in court. So they stay in these relationships trying to remedy the situations or eliminate the problem on their own, and it is oftentimes not successful. Domestic violence can help in child custody matters, but who's going to actually believe that the man is the one who has been the victim of domestic violence. They don't want a chance to. Okay, let's take a look at the psychological abuse. Psychological abuse in domestic violence relationships is gaining psychological control over the victim and then using that control to control the man or the relationship. Now,
how does that look like sometimes, JP? How does that look?
Well,
not being able to go over to your family's home, not being able to use your phone, not being able to use just social media. It's really, they are taking control of your life. Anything you do, you have to ask, or you're scared to ask, and those things of those natures.
You know, a lot of times when I talk to men about this who have not experienced it, they are judgmental and they say, I can't believe that a woman can psychologically abuse a man. How does that happen? Here's something to think about when it comes to the power of gaining control over a person's mind. Remember, cult leaders have been able to get hundreds of people to drink poison and kill themselves and their children because they had psychological control over them. So let's not underestimate the power of psychological control. And something else that I always say to men who are negatively judgmental or can't believe that this happens to other men is, let's take a look at the institution of slavery. The institution of slavery was successful throughout history all over the world, dating all the way back to biblical times. It was successful despite the fact that the slaves have always outnumbered their captors. The reason why the institution of slavery was successful is because of psychological control over those whom were enslaved. That is the reason why slavery was able to happen. When you think about the average slave plant, when I visit slave plantations in the South, and I'm standing out there in a tobacco field and envisioning 100 slaves out there working with one or two overseers, yes, they could have physically overpowered the overseer, but the psychological control was in place. So it is unfair to ever say that, oh, a man is weak and this can't happen throughout history. And that is how abusive women hold these men in these relationships, the psychological control. Okay. And so can look like, you know, homicidal threats, threaten to kill the man, threatening to call the police and accuse the man of domestic violence because the police are going to believe her over him.
No.
Barely.
But barely. They were changing. But
not enough.
Changing.
Now not enough.
Now it, FYI for our listeners, it's who called the police. If the man calls the police first, the woman will get arrested. If the woman calls the police first, the man will get arrested.
That way. But in the video that I uploaded on our page, he called the police and he got arrested. They believed her. Because you have to think about it, these women will go to the extent sometimes of physically harming themselves so that they can tell the police officer that the man did it. And because oftentimes the police officers are looking at it from a perspective of who is physically stronger, it still happens that these men end up getting arrested because the police are not thinking about the other definitions of an abusive relationship, the psychological piece, the psychological abuse. And so I'm happy to hear that they're moving more so in the direction of arresting the person. But think about it. These perpetrators of abuse, they know that. So it's a race to call the police first. If she thinks he's gonna call the police, she's gonna call first.
I'm jumping, getting on the phone first.
And sometimes they both call, which puts the police in a difficult position of, okay, who do I believe? Because he's standing here with a black eye.
The aggressor.
Right.
And most of the time they believe that the male is the aggressor.
And they end up getting arrested.
Yeah.
Look at the main thing that is psychologically abusive is when they threaten to leave and take. That is the main, as we talked about, the common thread in these relationships, whether it's a male or a female victim, is people do not want to lose their children. And in the videos I uploaded, for those who had, that was the reason why they stayed, because they believe, like, she's not playing. She is going to never let me see my kids again. And so, it's easier for them to stay in the abusive relationship than to risk never getting to see their kids again.
And then also, JP, I have seen also that it's so funny how times are changing. You know how the women used to be like, oh no, I'm very comfortable in my home right now. We have a lot more men that are stay-at-home fathers than we have stay-at-home mothers. And they love the cushiness of, so if you let a woman work, if she bring home the bacon fried up, it takes a very godly woman to understand that I am still not the head of my house. Even though I am bringing the income in this home, I'm still a helpmate, and you have to fall back. But it takes a very godly woman. Proverbs 31.
Well, and what is also included under the definition of domestic violence is financial abuse and using finances to control the partner or to limit or restrict him in some way, or her if it's a female victim. And when the abuser is able to use money to control the partner, it's also emasculating to that husband, to that boyfriend. So yes, you just talked about one of the other forms of a domestically violent and abusive relationship, the financial abuse. Okay, the next is emotional abuse. This is attacks and assaults upon the person's character and their whole person. Okay, playing upon their emotional struggles and fragility, their struggles with low self-esteem, low self-worth, okay? Using verbal attacks to emasculate them. Men who are mild-mannered or mild-tempered and or passive are at greater risk for being victims in an abusive relationship, ending up in a domestically violent relationship. Men who have low self-esteem, and I was saying this to one of my male clients just last week who is in an abusive relationship. He's struggling to set boundaries with his abusive wife, who is psychologically and emotionally abusive, because he does not value himself enough to say that he deserves better. And so when the emotional abuse begins to take place, he doesn't value himself enough to say, I don't deserve for you to talk to me this way. I don't deserve for you to humiliate me in this way. I don't deserve for us to have our friends over and you totally attack me and humiliate me in front of them and present that I'm weak and worthless and a total waste of time and all of these things that are emotionally abusive.
And this abuse also tears up other relationships, because friend and family members see this going on, and that's in men and women, and they try to come forth, and they're so it's just bad all around. It's just bad all around.
Yes.
And they're staying there for the children, but they don't understand how much damage
it does to the children,
that they are doing to the children. And if we want to get very, very technical about it, you could almost get a hotline. No, I have hotlines.
Oh, they can get hotlines.
I have hotline families for that.
Yeah.
So you're staying there because of the well good for the children, but how well good is it?
Yeah, and it needs to be hotlined.
Oh, yes.
You know, I always try to encourage men who are in these abusive relationships to at least try. And we're going to talk about that in part 2 next week, how to free oneself from these relationships. But at some point, they're going to have to trust the court system that if they present their story, that they are the victim of abuse, that they will not be prohibited from having visitation or custody of their children. And so next week, we're going to talk about how to present that story to the courts in a manner where a man can free himself from the abusive relationship without having to sacrifice being a father.
Exactly.
Okay.
A lot of that's with the courts and getting a good lawyer, documentation. And actually, in the state of Kansas, there is a go-between. I'm actually one that with the state, at least in Wyandotte County, you can ask for me to have the visitation and intermediate between the two. So, yes. I mean, there's a lot of good, helpful things out here that can help.
We'll cover all of that next week.
Yeah, you do not have to stay in this.
No. And so we definitely are going to provide information on how to free oneself from an abusive relationship, from a domestically violent relationship, even if you are a man and you feel like the court and the criminal justice system in general are against you. There are some ways for you to free yourself from this. Okay, last but not least is sexual abuse. Okay, the sexual abuse in domestically violent situations is rooted in the psychological control over the male victim via coercion and threats to leave, take the kids, all those different things. It's more so the sexual abuse is able to take place because the psychological control is in place, as opposed to it being physically overpowering him as in rape cases. Because oftentimes with female victims in abusive relationships, domestically violent relationships, that male abuser is physically overpowering her and raping her. In cases involving men, she has the psychological control, and that is how she then coerces him to engage in sex acts that might be uncomfortable for him or that he might find to be demeaning. And sometimes the sex act can take on like certain acts that are physically like, you know, biting and scratching and different things like that. But it is allowed to take place because she has that psychological control over him. And so for those who do not believe that men can be sexually abused, men can be sexually abused.
Yes, they can.
And there are male victims of rape, but that's a whole other show. That's a whole other show about how men are raped. But when it comes to domestic violence, it's usually coercion, you know, coercing that man into sex acts that he is not wanting to participate in. So when we look at the stats on this, the stats are all over the place. Everything from men representing as much as 15% of all domestic violence cases. On average, 600,000 men a year are victims of domestic violence, but only 10% of them will ever tell the police.
Oh, yes.
Every 3 weeks, a man is killed by his abusive partner. Those are the stats. And I'm only presenting the stats to say that they are greatly minimized. When you think about the fact that most men, either out of embarrassment or fear that they will not be believed, will never report that they are in an abusive relationship, these stats are hugely minimized. And then another thing to explain the minimization of these stats is that with my male clients, they oftentimes don't even realize that they are victims of domestic violence. Yes. Like,
a lot of them don't.
They don't. When I point out to them, like,
she's psycho. She's just psycho and crazy.
That's it. That's all they said. Well, she's just crazy. No, she's crazy and abusive. Crazy. You are being abused. You are in a domestically violent relationship. And they always look stunned, like, me? I'm not being abused. I'm being abused, but domestic violence? Yes. And so the first step is them acknowledging and accepting that they are being abused. And then the next step is them understanding that the definition of domestic violence is physical abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse. Like, they don't realize it. And so, of course, they never even think to report it and be a part of the stats on the prevalence of this. Because in their mind, well, she's just crazy. And I'm a man.
I can't. Psycho. I'm not worried about her. She just need her medicine. And a lot of women have those problems is because they do have some psychological problems, and the man will minimize it. Oh, she just been off her meds for a couple of days, but guess what? You just caught a case,
right?
And you just caught the case, and you're the one that's getting abused.
Right.
No. She was just off her medication, and this is a conversation I just had 2 weeks ago.
And it's ridiculous. And so once I point out to them and outline the definitions of domestic violence, that usually is a wake-up call for them to do something about it, because their masculinity says, well, I cannot be a victim of domestic violence. So I guess I do need to do something about this. Yes, because you are a victim of domestic violence. One of the videos that I uploaded was a video of basically it's two actors displaying a woman abusing a man in public and seeing the public's reaction. And if you all look at that video, you are going to be shocked, because when they showed the man being the abuser, people were willing to intervene and step up, and you can't do that, and da-da-da. But when the woman was the abuser, one woman walking by was rooting and cheering, and when they interviewed her later, she's like, well, I just assumed that he deserved it. That's the world that we live in when it comes to men being abused by women. Wow. All right, Stacy D.
Really a good show. We hit on a lot of good things, a lot of good topics. I hope our listeners really did get something out of this. If you don't need it for yourself, please just share it with a friend.
Yes. Next week, we will cover part 2 in this series, where we talk about how to free oneself from an abusive relationship.
Can we play Fantasia song?
Go ahead, play it. Play it next week.
I like Fantasia though. She's good.
Everybody likes Fantasia. She got pipes. Okay.
Yes, she does.
And we're also going to cover the resources that are available to men in these abusive relationships. So we're going to cover that next week. As far as today is concerned, are we good for today, Stacy D?
Yes. And I just want to shout out to Stephanie Payne Smith for doing all the lovely comments she was doing today on our Facebook page. Thank you, Stacy Watson. She said this was a very good topic and it needed to be spoken on. And guess what? Speaking of Unspeakable with JP and
Stacy D. Thank you all for joining us today. And remember, worry about nothing
and pray about everything.
God bless and take care.